the hills, it's even more because the amount of precipitation is very high. What is interesting when we look at these droplets is two things are very characteristic. One is that they are of different sizes and shapes. And then we realize that certain impossible events also happen, like these little insects which actually walk on top of the water. This one is a water strider, for example. And on the same leaf, you will see small drops and big drops, and there is a whole variety of them. So a drop is very, very unique. Let's quickly see how drops are formed. Drops are formed by three main processes. The first one is what is called nucleation. That is, either the molecules of water come together and form a larger drop, or they seed around a dust particle like it happens in clouds, and like you have in crystal growth, they actually start forming a larger drop. That's one method. One is called a homogeneous nucleation, where all the molecules come together, or it's called a heterogeneous nucleation if they are going to be settling on a dust particle. Also, drops are formed because the spherical shape is a minimum energy, minimum surface area shape. So these molecules which come together, they try to minimize their surface area and then form into a sphere. The third is under the influence of external forces. Like if you, in a laboratory, you have a pipette and you start blowing from one end, on the other end you will see a drop that is formed. And that will elongate what is called a pendant drop. And this is because of a phenomena called pinch off. That is, initially the drop elongates and then the neck gets cut off and then you have a drop form. These are understood to be the three main mechanisms by which drops are formed. So what are the main features, factors that govern the shape of a drop? The main property is surface tension. There are other things like viscosity, temperature, the pressure balance. If you have a system which has more than one kind of a material, like a bubble or an aerosol, or it could be the external fields, typically gravity or electrical fields, etc. We will be looking at surface tension and gravity alone. So let us look at the idea of what happens with surface tension. Now, surface tension is easily understood by this diagram on the left side. If you have a molecule of water which is right deep inside the bulk of the water, it has equal number of molecules on all sides and the forces get balanced out. But if you have a molecule on the surface of the water, there is an imbalance in the forces. The forces inside are stronger and the outside forces, that is towards the air, are lesser. So this imbalance creates a tension on the top layer. This tension is called the surface energy if it's a solid, or it's called the surface tension in the case of a liquid. Actually, both terms mean the same thing. This tension makes the top layer to act like a membrane, to act like it's a membrane, a stretched membrane. Again, that membrane, if you don't have the walls constraining it, it will shrink back into a sphere. But because if you have a wall, if you put this into a container, the top layer will continue to be horizontal. It is because there is this membrane that a live insect like the water strider can actually walk on top, because what it sees is not liquid water, but what it sees is a membrane caused by this surface tension. So this, in terms of physics, is understood as in two ways. One is the thermodynamical equilibrium, which is given as the energy minimization. The equation is there. But basically, one way to look at drops is that these are minimum energy structures. Okay. But there's another way to look at it, which is look at them as a mechanical equilibrium. We all have studied in school what is cohesion and what is adhesion. That is, cohesion is the intermolecular forces between like molecules, and adhesion is the force between unlike molecules. And what this does when there is a balance between cohesion and adhesion is that you can have various phenomena occurring. One of them is the Young-Laplace condition, where when you have a bubble that is formed, the air inside and the membrane of the bubble have different properties, and the pressure difference is seen as a mechanical equilibrium. That is, the pressure tries to equilibrate, and at some point the bubble will burst. So that is given by this famous Young-Laplace equation. What is interesting in this particular equation, what I want you to notice is the following, that the surface tension gamma out here or T on the right side, is dependent on the radius of the particular drop that we are looking at. So it is a curvature related property. It's not just related to the intermolecular forces. It is related to the curvature of the drop. So depending on the two radii R1 and R2, you can have various values for the surface tension if I maintain the same pressure. So a pinch off is understood in terms of this pressure difference, and the equilibration, the mechanical equilibration, is what causes the drop to pinch off. And it's the mean curvature on the two sides that matters. So basically, it depends on the shape of the drop. So analyzing the shape of the drop becomes extremely important. One last equation in this that I would like to state is what is called the bond number, which is related to the capillary length. Now, what this tells you is that there is this bond number which is given by some characteristic length, say the drop radii divided by the capillary length. The capillary length itself is a function of the surface tension and the density of the fluid, etc. What I want to notice is the following. If you have a large bond number, gravity dominates, and in those cases, the drop is called a drop. If the value is low, then it's only surface tension and the gravity does not have a big role to play, and those are called droplets. So we understand a drop as something which is affected by gravity. It can fall under gravity, whereas a droplet is something which is not affected by gravity and is dictated only by its intermolecular forces that exist within the system itself. Now, when you take a drop, what happens? These are photographs that I had taken on one rainy day, maybe in 5-10 minutes, just the drops that were falling on the floor. You can see that when a large drop hits a substrate, a surface, it will actually not just become flat. It goes through a series of movements. It can either form streaks, or it can form a thin crown. It can form a thick crown. It can splash, but in all these cases, you will notice that the larger drop is broken into smaller droplets. Remember, droplets are not easily affected by gravity, which means if you have a droplet, it will continue to be in the air for some time as compared to a drop. And also remember, every time the drop falls onto a surface with a certain force, it will splatter and burst out into smaller droplets. We will be coming back to this idea, so please keep this in mind. So a surface, the surface tension property of a drop tends to make drop spherical, whereas gravity tries to make a sessile drop, that is a drop on a surface. It makes a drop on a surface to become flatter, or it will elongate a pendant drop. So gravity has this effect that if gravity is acting on a large drop on a surface, it will make the drop flatter, or it will elongate the drop if it is a pendant drop. And roughness will enhance the wetting property. If I have a surface and if it is hydrophilic, that is, it's water loving, the contact angle is small. If I make the surface more rough, it will become more hydrophilic, and if it's hydrophobic, it will become more hydrophobic. So roughness enhances whatever wetting property already exists in that particular system. I am not going to go into the lotus leaf and the rose petal effect, which is basically that the same spherical drop, depending on the roughness and the capillary action of the roughness, can either roll off like a water drop on a lotus leaf, or it can stick to the rose petals. Remember that if there are dew drops on rose petal, even if you shake the rose, they won't fall. They'll be sticking to it. These are because of minor capillary action. I think Debarun is going to be speaking on this, so I'm not going to go deeper into this. What is relevant to us now is droplets and aerosols. Those are the words that we are constantly hearing for the past 3 months. So what is an aerosol? An aerosol is an aero solution, is a suspension of fine dust or liquid droplets in a gas. These can either be natural or it can be man-made. So examples of natural aerosols are fog and mist and pollens which have the dew around them, etc. Let's quickly come to COVID-19. Please do not take this as another case of a flu or influenza. It is not. This particular quote that was recently given by Peter Piot, who's a Belgian microbiologist who has worked on various kinds of SARS and Ebola and survived, and who actually was struck down by COVID-19, says this. Many people think that COVID-19 kills 1% of patients and the rest get away with some flu-like symptoms. But the story gets even more complicated. Many people will be left with chronic kidney and heart problems. Their neural system is disrupted. There will be hundreds of thousands of people worldwide who will need treatment such as renal dialysis for the rest of their lives. The more we learn about the coronavirus, the more questions arise. I mean, this is a man who is actually an expert in the field. Let us not take him lightly. And the latest update, when I say latest, I mean over the last 2 days, we have seen these two particular statements that the transmission of COVID-19 could be through aerosols and not just droplets. Until now, it was thought that it was through droplets. And the probability of brain strokes and multiple clots is very, very high. So the purpose of this slide is to impress upon you that please do not take this lightly. It's not to create fear. We should know how dangerous a particular disease is for us to take care of ourselves and protect ourselves. Do not be negligent about something as serious as COVID-19. So in the next few slides, I'm going to quickly show you some recent research on the droplets and the association. The references for each of these slides are on the bottom, so you can have a look at it. This one is a study which was done to find out the distribution of the particle size when somebody sneezes or coughs. So what happens when you cough or when you sneeze? The particle size, I should tell you that if you, another nomenclature, one is that if gravity acts, it's a drop. If it does not act, it is a droplet. Another nomenclature that is normally used is that if the size of the drop is about 3 microns, it's a drop. And if it's about 0.3 microns, it's a droplet. 0.3 is a cutoff for very highly sensitive aerosols and droplets, right? So when you cough, you can see that the mean diameter of these particles that come, when you mean particles, you mean what comes out of the mouth of a person who's coughing, is between 100 to 1000 microns. And you can see the distribution out there. Whereas when a person sneezes, the particle sizes can be as low as 2. Now we have just seen that the smaller the particle size, the larger the probability that it continues to stay in the air because it does not get acted by gravity. This is basic physics. So when a person coughs or sneezes, they are releasing not just one particle, but it's a blast of particles. And these particles have a distribution. And if one of the larger particles hits against the surface, it can again splatter back.